Good morning. At 12:01 this morning, the federal government shut down. This shutdown was avoidable. This shutdown was unnecessary. This shutdown will directly hurt Maryland and directly hurt Marylanders. And the President of the United States, the chief executive of this country, has a simple responsibility: to run a functioning government, not to shut it down. Well, the idea of running a functioning government, we've seen that the President has failed in that responsibility and has abandoned his duty to the states and his duty to the people. Leaders at the highest levels of government and inside the White House itself are looking at each and every one of us, all 50 states, and saying, you're now on your own. But while Washington sows division, in Maryland, we stand united. I look to my left and to my right behind me, and I see public servants of the highest order. I see partners inside the work. And we are doing and will continue to do everything in our collective power to keep our people safe and to keep our state moving forward. And so I want to recognize the members of Team Maryland who are with us today actively doing the work. Lieutenant Governor Aruna Miller, Representative Sarah Elfreth, Representative April McLean Delaney, Representative Johnny Olszewski, Comptroller Brooke Learman, Treasurer Derek Davis, Senate President Bill Ferguson, House Speaker Adrian Jones. So in the military, I learned that you're only as strong as the people to your left and to your right. And I could not be more proud to have such exceptional partners in this hour of unneeded crisis. So tonight, I'm going to be speaking to Marylanders directly from my office about how we got here, about what the shutdown means, and about where we go from here. But for now, I would like to briefly discuss 3 immediate actions that we are taking now to make sure we're protecting Marylanders during this unneeded and unnecessary shutdown. First, I've directed state agencies to employ contingency plans that will help to make sure that federal programs can continue to operate in our state for now. We will ensure that state employees supported with federal funding continue to get paid for as long as possible. Federal programs administered by the state will continue to support working families through Medicaid and SNAP and TANF. We will also provide greater flexibility to Head Start programs and ensure that veterans maintain access to essential resources. But I do want to be very clear. The longer this unnecessary federal government shutdown goes on, the harder it is for us to keep services going. We will continue to monitor the situation closely, and we will adjust accordingly. Second, we are working with the private sector to shield federal workers impacted by this shutdown from eviction, foreclosure, and utility shutoffs. This morning, I sent letters to the state judiciary and our state utility companies reminding them of their statutory legal protections for federal, state, and local government employees who are not receiving a paycheck or are at risk of eviction or foreclosure. And third, we are protecting and expanding emergency assistance programs for federal employees. If you are a furloughed worker, you may be eligible for unemployment insurance. Those eligible for unemployment will repay the funds once they start receiving a paycheck again. We've also worked with our credit unions and also our banks to offer financial assistance and payment flexibility for Marylanders who are affected by the shutdown. We are extending support for our landmark Feds to Eds programs, connecting Marylanders with federal government experience to a fulfilling career in education. And federal workers who want to learn more about emergency resources should go to go.md.gov/federal shutdown. These are the 3 steps that we are taking right now. First, keep government programs running and keep state employees on the job. Second, trigger protections that help Marylanders keep a roof over their heads, the lights on, and groceries in the fridge. And third, protect and expand emergency financial supports to federal workers. We should not be here right now, Maryland. And here's the harsh reality. The longer this unnecessary shutdown lasts, the more likely we are to see serious damage in our state. We could see big infrastructure projects delayed. We could see military families, people who've already sacrificed for this country, go without pay for weeks. We could see small businesses dip into the red. And all of this is coming at a time when our state has been working hard and having real momentum on modernizing our economy and diversifying off of the federal government. We will do everything in our power to deliver relief to those who are struggling. But I also want to be clear that there is not a single state in this country that is prepared to fill this enormous gap that is being created by this federal administration. A prerequisite to keeping the government open should not be cutting people off of health care. A prerequisite for keeping the government open should not be forcing people to have their premiums jump. So on behalf of the 6.5 million Marylanders, my message to President Trump is clear. Stop this shutdown. You're the one causing it. We're the ones dealing with it. And Marylanders are the ones feeling it. And so with that, I will turn the program over to Lieutenant Governor Aruna Miller.
Thank you so much, Governor Moore. Good morning, everyone. It's good to be here with Team Maryland. And Governor Moore is absolutely right. Marylanders are already feeling the impact. They're bearing the consequences while the president's policies have wreaked havoc on our economy. Shutdowns don't just stop government. They shortchange the very people who need government services the most. And let's remember, Maryland is home to more than 60 federal facilities, 260,000 federal workers, and over 200,000 federal contractors. If any state is going to bear the consequences of this shutdown the most, it is the state of Maryland. All these people are living with the deep uncertainty now. And I want to be clear, while the challenges are real, so is our resolve. We're ready to meet this moment, just as Maryland has done in the past, with focus, with partnership, with action, to help our residents weather the storm. And the only way to get through the storm is together. We must lean on each other, we must count on each other, and we must stand shoulder to shoulder. Look, no matter what happens in Washington, Maryland will remain steady and strong and will always stand with its people. And together, we will leave no one behind. Now it's my pleasure to introduce the U.S. Representative from Maryland's 3rd District, Sarah Elfreth.
Thank you, Lieutenant Governor and Governor, for bringing us together today. I've been back and forth from here in the 3rd District to Washington all week, as have my colleagues in the Congressional delegation, and we are working every day, every single day. We've introduced legislation to support federal workers. We are calling back every constituent who has reached out to our office with questions and offers of help. And I'm ready to vote on a bipartisan bill that protects the health care of the American people and keeps our government back open. Our country is in a health care and affordability crisis. The governor mentioned that Congress must act before premiums skyrocket and health care becomes out of reach for millions of Americans. Right here in Maryland, 190,000 Marylanders will be impacted if Congress does not act to expand the Affordable Care Act's tax credits. And we already know that premiums are set to go up by 13% on January 1st. Letters go out today. That's why this moment is so important. If Congress doesn't act to save health care and reopen the government. I'm not trying to scare people, I'm just laying out what is at risk and what we are fighting for. And I am deeply, deeply disappointed that the Republicans who control the White House and both chambers of Congress were unable to engage in any kind of meaningful negotiation and instead treated our federal workers as political pawns. I'm just going to pause and reference the president and his threats to federal workers, obviously, as it's been said, would disproportionately impact Maryland. I've been in many a budget negotiation in my career. The Senate president can agree to that. I've always felt that the first person to make a threat usually has the shorthand. I think it is deeply offensive that the president is threatening to fire federal workers if we can't reach an agreement without offering any meaningful solutions here. The president continues to threaten those workers, but please know, if you're a civil servant in the state of Maryland, know that we have your back as a team. That's why we're here today, to announce all the ways that our offices can continue to deliver for you each and every day. The federal government might be shut down, but our offices are working. We will answer every phone call. We will respond to every email. We will be there for you to answer your questions and provide those critical government services on your behalf. I'm grateful to have such a strong state and local partners in the days and weeks ahead, and please know that, again, we remain open, and I'm sorry to have to do this, but I actually have to head to DC to try to find a solution. Thank you all very much, and it's my pleasure to introduce my colleague from representing Western Maryland, April McLean Delaney.
Thank you, Sarah, and thank you so much to our governor and to our lieutenant governor. His leadership at this crucial time is really important, and I feel very blessed to be a part of the Maryland delegation. It is really important at this crucial time that our state, in addition on a federal level, is really cross-leveraging our local, our county, our state resources to meet the need and to get out information. Listen, the first priority I have is to the working families and businesses in the 6th District of Maryland. And I don't want to shut down. No one wants to shut down. And ironically, shutdowns cost more to than keeping the government open. And those who pay the price are our working families, and most specifically our government workers, of which I have 35,000 of them within the 6th District of Maryland. The important part, I would say, is that we also cannot sign off on a bill that makes life harder and less affordable for working Americans, that throws up to 9,000 people in the 6th District off of their health care, that almost doubles premiums for all Americans, and also undercuts so many vital services that are needed across the county and the state in terms of food security and other vital services. It is my intent to work as hard as I can to make sure that we reopen government as expeditiously as we can. But we have to have another side that will come to the table and will actually dialogue. Because an administration or a party that demands everything they want all the time on every issue and every budget and is unable to dialogue is one in which we have to make sure that there is a clear line. My office is open. We have an FAQ on our website. We will continue to dialogue, and I will be in Germantown later today at one of our health and regional services center to talk about the impact of this shutdown, but also how we can mitigate it and work across so many different stakeholders to be there. Again, I commend our governor, our lieutenant governor, our delegation, and know that we have the backs of our workers, our families, and they will continue to be there working towards the end of this shutdown. And with that, I turn it over to Johnny O, a distinguished member of our freshman class, and I'm very pleased to call him a friend as well.
Well, I want to thank Representative McLean Delaney for her remarks, for her leadership, along with Representative Elfreth, our U.S. senators, and the entire Maryland delegation for their willingness to be in D.C. yesterday and the day before and today, and our preparedness to be at a moment's notice to go back to the nation's capital to vote for a common sense bipartisan bill that reopens our federal government. I want to also thank the governor, the lieutenant governor, and all of Team Maryland for their partnership as we respond to this unnecessary crisis and for all that they are doing for the residents of the state of Maryland. We are ready to work. We're ready to negotiate. We're ready to pass a responsible bipartisan budget, one that honors our civil servants and that delivers for the American people. Passing a budget is perhaps the most basic responsibility that we have. Yet Republicans who control the House, the Senate, and the White House have canceled votes for the week. It's very clear that they have no intention of negotiating with us in good faith. Unfortunately, we know those consequences of a shutdown are especially acute here in Maryland. The thousands, the hundreds of thousands of federal workers living here are not political pawns. They are people with mortgages. They are neighbors. They are dedicated public servants with mortgages to pay and families to support. More than 15,000 Maryland residents have already lost their job because of firings from Donald Trump, Elon Musk, Doge, and this Republican Congress. That's more than any other state in the country. It's why I introduced legislation to block the president from carrying out his threats to fire more federal employees during this government shutdown. It's why I strongly support Congresswoman Elfreth and Senator Alsobrooks' bill to support furloughed employees. And it's why I thank Governor Moore, Speaker Jones, Senate President Ferguson, and the men and women of the General Assembly for all they have done to provide the resources that have been announced today. In this moment, we can make the difference in supporting Maryland families. Our office, like my colleagues, will be business as usual. My staff, who will be working without pay until government reopens, will continue to answer calls, handle casework, and help connect constituents to resources. We, too, have a shutdown guide on our website, and we are committed to serving Marylanders throughout this crisis. I'll close with this. The health care cuts accepted in the Republican budget are unacceptable, and they're worth fighting against. But we also can't lose sight of something else equally important, and that's protections from future cuts. This administration, the Trump administration, with support from Republicans in Congress, have already slashed billions from the last continuing resolution, bipartisan agreements that then are followed with cuts to foreign aid, public broadcasting, and Medicaid. How can one negotiate in good faith without a guarantee that these types of cuts won't happen again, especially when vital funding like that for the Key Bridge has already been under direct threat from President Trump himself? I think we can find compromise without compromising our values. Our colleagues need to come to the table and work with us. We are ready. In the meantime, again, I thank the governor, lieutenant governor, Team Maryland, our treasurer, and our next speaker, someone who helps us understand exactly the pain that is inflicted from things like tariffs to employee firings, our comptroller, Brooke Learman.
Thank you, Congressman Olszewski. Good morning, everybody. Thank you, Governor Moore, Lieutenant Governor Miller. It's an honor to be a part of Team Maryland, because today marks a day that will be remembered as yet another failure of leadership by our Republican leaders in Washington, a new low for the Trump administration's governance of our nation. Once again, Republican leaders have forced a government shutdown, and once again, hardworking Americans, particularly Marylanders, will pay the price for this recklessness. The shutdown is not just a policy agreement among federal leaders. It's the abandonment of at least 400,000 Marylanders who depend on federal paychecks as employees or contractors. It's a deliberate choice by Republican leaders in Washington to cut costs instead of saving lives, to gut health coverage, to sacrifice essential services, and to fail to address the affordability crisis that threatens our nation. Now, I also want to be honest, we're going to see some pundits try to blame Democratic leaders for this crisis. But let's be honest about what's really happening here. President Trump is already laying off federal workers. He's doing it every month. 15,100 Marylanders have already lost their jobs. It's just not making headlines every day. What he wants is for Democrats to rubber stamp a budget that funds a government he's using to destroy our economy, target his political enemies, and reward his wealthy cronies. A budget bill, I might add, laden with tricks that will make government less transparent, including one provision that would effectively allow big corporations to completely hide their tax payments to federal and state governments. And remember, if President Trump doesn't like pieces of whatever budget is passed, as Congressman Olszewski denoted, Republicans will simply pass another bill to rescind those portions they disagree with, as they did months ago. No elected official looking out for the constituents should be complicit in that. This is an existential crisis for our nation, but also for Maryland, a deeply personal one. Let's be clear about what's at stake for Maryland. A study by my office in partnership with the University of Maryland found that before this administration took office, the federal government invested $150 billion annually through wages, retirement income, grants, contracts, and direct payments. Since January, this number has been in steady decline. And today, because of this shutdown, we're approaching a critical point. Maryland has lost already over 15,000 federal jobs to layoffs. At the same time, our cost of living continues to rise, driven in part by this administration's misguided tariff policies. Our state is being forced to do more with less, supporting Marylanders with fewer federal resources and less funding. And we've been down this road before. According to the Congressional Budget Office, the last Trump shutdown resulted in an estimated $3 billion loss in economic activity nationwide. Well, my office estimates that the 2019 shutdown cost Maryland over $13 million a day in statewide economic activity, a daily loss of $550,000 in state revenues, which equals more than $700,000 a day in today's dollars. Maryland, as the governor said, will not stand idly by while hardworking families suffer the consequences of Washington's dysfunction. We are activating state resources to support those affected. Working together with the governor, the General Assembly, the Secretary of Labor, and the Treasurer, my agency will be working to make these state loan programs available to provide financial relief to federal workers during this crisis. No one should have to choose between paying their mortgage and putting food on the table because Republican leaders failed to negotiate in good faith. But state assistance is not a substitute for responsible federal governance. So we call on Republican leaders in Congress to end this manufactured crisis immediately and to work across the aisle in good faith to fulfill the promises they made to the people who elected them. Marylanders are not pawns in a political game. They're our neighbors, they're our families, they're our friends, they're workers and business owners driving the growth of our communities and the strength of our state. So I, along with all of Team Maryland, our governor, lieutenant governor, treasurer, speaker, Senate president, members of Congress, I urge our federal delegation to continue fighting for a swift resolution. Maryland stands with our federal workforce. We stand with families who need affordable health care, and we stand ready to lead while others choose chaos over competence. Now, I'm so delighted to introduce my partner in finances for the state of Maryland, Treasurer Derek Davis.
Good morning, everyone. Much has been said by the governor and the speakers before me, so I won't repeat what they've said, but I do have just a few words for our federal representatives. Not here in Maryland. I've had the opportunity to work with them, and I know what hardworking, dedicated public servants they are. But here we are once again, another federal government shutdown. I'm old enough to remember when even the talk of it was a big deal. But now we have this discussion every single year. Now, we won't have it next year because, see, their jobs will be up. It will be 1 month before the election. So somehow we will manage to get a budget done and on time because their families will be impacted. But now it's our families. And instead of this being a solid moment, what we have is the blame game going on, finger pointing. And instead of them taking responsibility for the situation that they've caused, this should be a solemn moment. But instead, we're pointing fingers, we're saying whose fault it is, and we're not taking that same responsibility. And that's not behavior we would accept from our children. But yet, we have to accept it from our federal representatives. As a Marylander, I know my state is home to thousands of federal workers and employees, as well as countless contractors and small businesses whose livelihoods are tied directly to the operation of the federal government. For them, this is not a game or silly power grab. For them, this is about mortgage payments, medical bills, groceries, college tuition payments, and everyday household expenses not being met. This has a trickle-down effect to our restaurants, our child care providers, and our service industry when their customers are thrown into financial uncertainty through no fault of their own. I know a lot of us has talked about the economic impact of the shutdown, and rightfully so, but there's also a basic human component about this as well. Dedicated public servants who have chosen careers in service to their country should not have to annually worry about their family's financial security. This is about dignity, fairness, and basic decency. I'll close by saying to the leaders in Washington that this is the ask. Rise above partisan conflict, learn the definition of compromise, fulfill your obligations, and get the government open and working as expeditiously as possible. That's all that we ask. And now I welcome to the podium the President of the Maryland Senate, Bill Ferguson.
Good morning. You've heard a lot. I have three very brief messages. One, this is not normal. We cannot stand here and think that the norms and institutions that this country has been built on can be shattered by one administration. This is not normal. Two, to the 150,000 Marylanders who serve the federal government, I'm sorry that you're facing this, and we will do whatever it takes to weather this storm for as long as we can. We thank you for your service to this country, and we know that you show up to work every day that you can to protect Americans from all of the forces that can do evil. Unfortunately, right now, we're finding that those forces are within. And three, I stand here on behalf of all of the members of the Senate to say that we will work together and united as one Maryland to make sure that we can weather this storm. And with that, I want to hand it over to my partner in the General Assembly and my friend, Speaker Adrian Jones.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Marylanders are no strangers to threats of federal government shutdowns. But last night, these threats became a reality. While much has been said today about how we got here, my thoughts, first and foremost, are always with our federal employees. Like everyone speaking today, they are public servants. They are our neighbors. They have bills to pay. And during federal government shutdowns, they are the first to suffer. We refuse to let them bear the burden alone. So in 2019, the Maryland General Assembly passed the federal Shutdown loan program, which creates a mechanism for zero-interest loans to Maryland federal employees in Maryland who are required to work during a federal funding lapse. These are not handouts. These are lifelines. It allows someone who shows up for work but would otherwise go unpaid during a prolonged government shutdown to maintain rent, utilities, and groceries. It acts as a bridge until federal pay is restored, avoiding evictions, credit damage, or financial setbacks in a family's life. This year, we recognize that disruption isn't limited to shutdowns. It can be relocations, closures, or mass terminations, as the president has recently threatened. So we expanded and modernized the protections we passed in 2019. The Federal Loan Fund now also protects fired or displaced federal employees and provides the same kind of financial support. These laws do more than move money. They protect dignity, stability, and the promise that public servants should not be punished by forces beyond one's control. Let's remember that Maryland has always been resilient in times of uncertainty. While this federal shutdown will present serious challenges, we are ready to respond, protect, and support all our communities. And with that, I thank you, and thank you for being here today.